Hey guys, welcome to episode 10 of Inspect. My guest today is a household name in the world of CSS. He's a founder and a writer at CSS Tricks, founder and designer at Codepen, and co-host of Shop Talk, a podcast about design and development. It's my pleasure to welcome to the show Chris Coyier.
Hey!
Welcome to the show, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, this is great. We learned about time zones again. Classic thing. One time had built a little app just for my coworkers at work, just to be like, okay, how does this work again? Because we have someone in Australia now, Rachel Smith at Codepen, and I had to like design a draggable little app just to wrap my mind around.
Yeah.
Who's where and when.
Yeah, that's because all of Codepen is the whole team is remote, aren't they?
Yeah, we are. They're very remote. Nobody's near each other at the moment.
Yeah, cool. I mean, obviously we'll get onto Codepen in a little while and all the other things you do. But for that small corner of the internet who doesn't actually know who Chris Coyier is, do you want to just give a quick sort of rundown of who you are, what you do, and sort of where you're from?
Yeah, sure. I'd be glad to. So yeah, hi everybody. I'm Chris. Yeah. I do all kinds of stuff about the web, and it's not that I struggle. I have perfectly good time, explaining to other people in the industry, what I do and stuff. But sometimes, like I just got my hair cut yesterday, and they're like, "Hey, what do you do? You're new here." Yeah, I'm like, I do, I build websites, I guess, which generally people understand, But then I'm like, well, I don't, because right away they get the idea that you're a freelancer, They're like, oh, really? We're looking around to get the website redone here. I'm like, I could maybe suggest somebody, but I'm not just me. There's plenty of freelancers in this world. Yeah, sure. I'm just not one of them. I work on websites, but I don't do freelance. And then they're like, well, what do you work somewhere? I'm like, not really. It's so so what I usually end up telling people is that I help other people learn about the web, which I think is true to some degree. I have a blog called CSS Tricks. It's css-tricks.com. It's going on 10 years old. It'll be 10 years old in July. Yeah, 4th of July, actually, which is really cool. And what it is I guess primarily it's a blog. It's a lot of different things. I mean, we have a video screencast that we publish once in a while. There's forums on there of people talking to each other and asking questions. There's a thing called the Almanac, which is kind of like not blog-like, but structured content around like what are all the properties in CSS, and an article explaining those. But I guess kind of the heart and soul, you'd say, of CSS Tricks is the blog, where we pretty much publish something every day, if not multiple things that range from tutorials to interviews to links and commentary about other things to just thoughts and stuff. There's like a blog, the format can be anything, so that's a big deal. And the point of it is, read CSS Tricks and you're staying up with the industry and you're learning new stuff about the web.
Sure, because it's not just a blog. It is basically a go-to resource for everything modern in the web development world as well. Most of your articles are probably the first place that people hit when they're learning about something like Flexbox and CSS Grid and just some of the CSS properties that people tend to fix.
It does end up being referential like that. You're right. It ends up being, you Google it and land there to find some kind of resource. And I love that too. In fact, I was just looking at our analytics and it was 87% or maybe it's 84%, some mid 80s number is the traffic that we get from search engines, and the bulk of that from Google, of course. So yeah, traffic wise is healthy on CSS Tricks, and a lot of it comes right from search. But there's there's that aspect of it, and there's the I just read it like a magazine. I subscribe over RSS, or I subscribe to the email thing because I just want to read what's new there. So there's kind of two aspects of it. There's that referential content. There's the I land here because I'm Googling something, and just our general readership.
Yeah, and I think I'm kind of in the second camp, whereas I sort of subscribe to the RSS feed and follow on social media, on Twitter and stuff. So I get to see all the regular updates. But then it is always a landing point when I do need a little bit of help on something that I've forgotten, or something that's not just front of mind all the time. But yeah, so what would you say was the driving force in setting up the blog in the first place?
The blog itself was, I mean, I kind of
the whole of the site actually.
Yeah, well, it started as a blog for sure, because it was 10 years ago, and it was and always has been a WordPress site. I was kind of learning about WordPress even at the time, and it was it was kind of like me and a buddy of mine were like spinning up WordPress sites with kind of a pipe dream of filling them with content and putting Google AdSense on them essentially to try to get some beer money kind of thing. And we did that for a while, and it wasn't, anyway, it's kind of a long, not that interesting story. But the point is, the only one that I enjoyed writing for was CSS Tricks. I was just like, this is fun. Like, I like writing about web stuff. I like doing web stuff. This is, hopefully I can make a career out of this, but it's fun anyway. So it really clicked with me, this working on website stuff.
So of these other blogs that you set up, are any of those still running, or did they?
Nah, no. Long gone. In fact, they were Adobe related. They were like help websites for different Adobe software, which was fun. And but it wasn't, my heart wasn't in it necessarily. I wasn't like, God, I can't wait to diagnose somebody's, installation of InDesign trouble or whatever. And then, they shut down, I'd say mostly because of lack of interest from us. And then secondarily, the nail in the coffin was that Adobe didn't like that the name of their software is in the URL. So if you want to buy a URL today, you can't buy Adobe Illustrator sucks.com or something like that, because it has their name in it. It's copyrighted.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah. Anyway, that was like ancient history, but that was the early days of CSS Tricks. And, it was a very different site then. I was just like, here's some cool little trick I learned about CSS or whatever. It's such a dorky name, like it's very, if I could go back in time, I probably would change it. But at this point, I won't, because it's just...
It's your brand name now, right? And it's not just about CSS. That's the issue is because it's got a lot of obviously JavaScript, HTML, and everything else around the web. But the name is CSS Tricks. But yeah, you've got to the point now where you just don't need to change it. It's a household name now. It's your brand.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that.
Yeah. So it's coming on to 10 years. You said. Do you have any sort of plans to celebrate the 10 years? Have you got anything that you're planning to do?
We had a little meeting about it today, actually, and I think so. We'll do something. I always publish something on the 4th of July. There's been a birthday post on every, and I usually use it to do kind of a State of the Union, what's going on, what we're thinking, milestones we've crossed, that kind of thing. And then at the end of the year, usually I do like a statistical post of, how did we do by the numbers. But usually July 4th is kind of a, I don't know, more checking in with Chris kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I'll do that for sure, and mark the occasion in a bigger way because it's 10 years. But we're also thinking like maybe we should do something more. So I actually am not entirely sure exactly what we're going to do. It's about a month away still, and we have some ideas and of course bigger things we're working on. So we might just kick it into high gear and hopefully get one of those bigger things done and say that the anniversary inspired it, kind of thing.
Yeah, sure.
I wish I could announce it here. I just don't know what it's going to be yet, but it will be. We'll celebrate somehow,
Yeah, exactly. So when you started the blog, this was going back 2007. Was this your full time gig then at the time, or were you working elsewhere? Or how were you sort of juggling your time when you took on the project?
Yeah, in the very early days, it was very much just a side project thing, and but I was at an agency. It was my very first web job. I lucked myself into. I was actively looking for one because I knew that I wanted to work on websites and how much fun, and I was having fun building websites on my own, obviously. And CSS Tricks being one of them, but personal website and spinning up a joke site or something, or in my band site, and any excuse I had to play with a website, I would do it. Mm-hmm. So I get this job, and so on my income was having an agency job essentially, and it remained a side project for at least 5 years.
Yeah. Okay, and then you reached like a tipping point where you realize that you can make this full time.
Yeah. Exactly. I was just like, yeah, and even then, that didn't last that long because at the very time that I decided to kind of go totally solo and not have a steady income, normal 401k kind of job, I then started Codepen. So it's,
Ah, okay, I see. Okay, so
that became the job as well.
cool. Look, just before we get onto Codepen, so CSS Tricks now, is that a it's not a solo venture, I take it. There's you've got some staff working on that. How big is the team that works on that site in particular?
Yeah, it's fluctuated a little bit. There's no other full-time staff. There's just staff writers, of which there's Sarah Dresner and Jeff Graham and Robin Rendell and Miriam Suzanne, who, they just would consider them staff because they write regularly, and
Right.
we like share a Slack and talk to each other and stuff. But then there's just tons of guest authors. So we like say publicly, we accept guest authors and have a page that explains on how that goes down, and we pay for it and we help you edit and all that stuff. So they're not employees, but certainly they're, benefactors of CS Tricks or whatever. So yeah, and then through time, there's been administrative help, and there's advertising help, and planning help and stuff like that. But I'm really the only full timer at CSS Tricks, and it's weird to even call me full time because I split my time between my other projects, so it's just part time for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, it's quite a big project for a part-time project, I guess.
Kinda, yeah. I mean. But in the end, it's it's a WordPress site. It's one server. It's hosted. It's just it's not particularly difficult thing to keep online. So a lot of days you just wake up and you publish some words, and then I don't think about it for the rest of the day and do other work, and then the next do a little planning at night. Maybe like, oh, what are we going to do tomorrow? Oh, we'll publish this. Okay, it could be. It would be neat. It would be a different world if I spent 8 hours a day on CSS Tricks. It could be even cooler, more in-depth, more feature-rich, more content-heavy. I don't know. But
yeah, I suppose the rate that things change doesn't really warrant having content being pushed out maybe even several times a week. It's a fast-moving industry, but it's not that fast that it probably needs, a full-time effort on it, I guess.
Right. I think what it would need is it could be done. I mean, I could see a world in which I do that, but then it would also require, I think, a business strategy that's a little more robust than what we got. Like, if I was going to be like, all right, I'm going to go definitely hardcore full-time on this thing all day, every day, I'd want to hire somebody else that was like almost like a what do you call the accounting version of a CEO or whatever, like a chief financial officer or something. Like, that's way too big of a word for what it is, but somebody who's like actively, more like a salesperson, really, who's out there selling sponsorships and like making sure the thing is making money so that it warrants a full-time thing.
Okay. So instead you're focusing most of your attention on your other projects, and which is your biggest one, I guess, is Codepen.
Yeah, which is quite a bit bigger than Codepen has this full-time staff of 7 now, and 7 good developers. So it's like kind of a apples and oranges at this point almost. Thankfully.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. So in my research, I found that Codepen was started in 2012. Is that right? So it's been going for about 5 years now.
Like the super early version. The very first version was 2012.
Yeah, I don't think I caught it at 2012. I was probably a little bit later than that, but yeah, I've been using it for a couple of years now. But again, could you put it in your own words how to explain exactly what Codepen is? Because as a user, it's quite obvious what it is, but
well, I hope so, but it isn't absolutely to everybody. I would think to you, another front end developer, you're like, yeah, I get it. I see sites like this. It's not the only one. I don't know. I have so I think to some people, you and me, we're like, yeah, I get it. I have an account there, and I go log in, and I make little things. A pen, as we call it on Codepen, is like a little tiny website in a sense. It's HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, and you can write it right there on CodePen in your browser. So it's a code editor in the browser, and you're seeing all four of these things happen at once. You're writing HTML in one panel, CSS in another panel, JavaScript in another panel, and the fourth panel is the preview of what you've built, and it's updating itself in real time. And the reason why that's cool is because it's just so satisfying to, change one little value and see it change visually. It's like a little tiny development environment that's just really easy and quick to use. Yeah. And so we keep packing features into that, like, oh, you want to write in Sass? No problem. Just turn it on. You want to write in Babel? No problem. Turn it on.
Yeah, because these are the difficult parts of development. Not the difficult parts, but the laborious, time-consuming parts is setting up your environment. Sometimes you just want to, do a quick mock-up to prove a concept, and you don't want to have to, open up your terminal and install a bunch of dependencies.
Make a folder, npm install everything and stuff. And there's reason to do that as well, of course.
Yeah.
So CodePen is that. It allows you to get on something small and stuff. And it doesn't even have to be small. I mean, people make sprawling, amazing, big, huge things on it. So it starts there, and that's a way that you can think about it at first. But it really, people do use it in tons of different ways. They use it to make a test case to share with somebody, like, oh, here, I'm having a problem with this. Take a look at it, kind of thing. That's the, links to it in Stack Overflow or whatever, things like that. People use it to kind of just show off, like, wow, look at this, I made this amazing thing. And they would do that because they have a profile on CodePen, and it becomes part of their profile, and then their CodePen profile becomes a little bit like a personal site to them, almost like a resume or a portfolio of your work. And there's kind of some social reason to do it. It's a bit of a social network in that I can follow you, you can follow me, people heart things on CodePen, and they can leave comments on things, and we track views and other metadata on it so that we can sort things by popularity and fuel our search and stuff. So it's a social network as well. So it has this whole code editor component where you're building stuff. It has a kind of a front-end developer community aspect to it, and it has like an inspiration aspect to it too, because there's so many users and so many pens that have been created that you can search around and kind of get lost browsing around CodePen with because there's just loads of content there that we intentionally try to make findable and explorable.
Yeah, and so, like you said, you can just get lost because some of the stuff that people are producing on there is just amazing. And you forget that this is just done with those three core front-end technologies, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. All right, there's some external libraries maybe added in, but essentially those three elements, and people have created some ridiculously complex and amazing-looking demos.
Right, and it's all open source too, which is good to know. So if you find something that you like in CodePen, it's MIT licensed if it's a public pen, that has been shared with you. So go ahead and use it and fork it and play with it yourself and all that. So I should say, though, that a big change for us in the very recent past on CodePen is we've been trying to grow up a little beyond that, even in that. So I explained to you how there's CSS panel, this, the HTML panel, the JavaScript panel. What happens if you want to, you need 3 CSS files because you're used to working in Sass with partials, or let's say you want to have 5 JavaScript files because you have an entry point for your Webpack thing, but you have 4 modules that go with it. Let's say you have a 5-page site, so you need 5 HTML files. That stuff is kind of possible in the pen editor, but it's really not designed for that. That's more like you're used to working on your local machine, spinning go into your terminal and creating a folder and, npm install and that whole world. We wanted to get into that too, because we want to, that's what some developers expect. And we want you to be able to build something even bigger and more robust and that type of thing. So CodePen now has CodePen projects as well. So you can make a new pen, which is the old thing that we described, and you can make a new project. That's the new thing that I just described. So you can kind of do both of those things, and projects is kind of cool. You can deploy it as well, and you can map a custom domain to it. So it's really kind of a website builder too, if you're into that kind of thing.
Yeah. So projects was launched. Was it the tail end of last year?
I think it's even newer than that. It's really only 3-4 months old at
Oh
this
wow,
point.
this year. Okay. So how long have you been working on the projects element of Codepen then? Because I imagine that's quite a big project.
It was indeed, and it wasn't. The story of it really is that we, at one point, were trying to decide as a company, do we go on our own here and just slow growth and chip away at it, and maybe we'll make enough money one day to hire somebody, and then maybe we'll keep growing and hire somebody else. And that's we're kind of in between that and full on investment. So we did take investment, and now it's been, I don't know, a year and a third ago or so.
Mm-hmm.
On purpose, and it was from friends of ours, so it wasn't like it's not like we went around Silicon Valley knocking on doors and making pitch decks for people and stuff, but they're smart guys who believed in us and who are our friends and previous bosses at the last startup we were at. So they gave us $1 million at Codepen to grow a bit, and we took it on purpose because we're like, we had this idea for projects because people ask for it. They're like, I need multiple files, this other app gives me multiple files, whatever. We called it multiple files as an internal name on Codepen forever.
Yeah, that's not a good name.
No, it's not, but it kind of described what people wanted. They want multiple files.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, not a good name though. So we said, okay, if we're going to do this for real, we can't, it's too hard for the three of us to do, me and Tim and Alex, only because part of our job requires doing support and like making sure the app stays up and we are on top of normal growth and stuff. It's like we don't have all day every day to dig into a new feature because there's just so much work that's just day-to-day necessary work that needs to happen.
Yeah.
We need more bodies. We need more developers, and we knew just who we wanted. So we got the round of funding and then reached out to the people we wanted right after that, and they all said yes, and and away we go. So we got some really smart developers, and Marie, who's head of support, but she's head of community, and she's hosts the podcast, and she does all kinds of stuff for us. So we have Marie Mosley, Tim Holman, Rachel Smith, and Jake Albaugh, who are the 4 people we hired after funding, and then got into it right away. As soon as we got them all onboarded, we're like, here's what we're doing. We're building projects, and we didn't think it was going to take quite this long. It took about a year to get it start to finish, and now it's out and it's been good.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. I've had a little play about with it, and yeah, it's one of those features which you don't realize how great it is once you actually start using it, because people are used to working that way, like you said, having multiple files and just splitting your code across into sort of making it modular, and that was one thing that was always lacking.
Right. Even simple stuff like images. You need an image, drag and drop an image on there. It uploads into your little file system, and then you reference it, relatively like you're used to doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's not like as it's a much more humongous feature development wise than Pens, but there's not as much to explore with projects because we intentionally made it a pretty pro lockdown feature. And just because we have to, because we're a small business and we're trying to be a business that sticks around for a very long time.
Of course, yeah.
It's you know what I mean? Like a free user gets one project, for example, whereas a free user gets unlimited pens. So that's kind of a big difference.
Yeah. Okay. You mentioned earlier about Tim and Alex. So obviously you're one of the founders. There's 3 of you. The other 2, Alex Vasquez and Tim Sabat. Just a little bit about who they are and how you hooked up with them and what their background is as well, and their involvement in the project.
They're both just friends of mine. We met in Florida. We met because I left my agency job at a point to go work for a company called Wufoo, which is like a form builder that's still around, still chugging, doing well. It wasn't exactly early days of Wufoo when I got on. I think they were maybe 5 years in too. I can't remember, maybe a little longer than that. It was like a Y Combinator startup, one of the first classes of Y Combinator. And they did well and eventually felt like getting out of the game and sold Wufoo to SurveyMonkey. So I was there at that time, as were the original 3 co-founders of Wufoo, and Tim and Alex, and some support staff as well. So we all were there during that. And we were just friends. We were just living in Florida, working on a startup, having fun. And and became friends. And then we went to SurveyMonkey, and we all worked there together as well. So now we've moved across the country together. We've worked at 2 different jobs together and became even better friends. So at that time, then I was at SurveyMonkey for about a year, which is a great place, but I was just ready to do my own thing. I left to do my own thing, and they stuck around another year, but we're also kind of thinking of like, God, why don't we all work together again? Why don't we do our own thing? Why don't we take a stab at, true entrepreneurship?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like the early days of Codepen. But all these stories are intertwined, because it was why Codepen, well, that structure of, building things with just little panels of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript is a fantastic way to show off front-end demos, which is what CSS Tricks is all about. So the early days of Codepen was, let's build this for CSS Tricks, essentially.
No, it's a good idea because, you do have a lot of code examples on your CSS Tricks articles. So, yeah, why not make those interactive and show exactly how they're built?
Indeed.
So are there any plans to grow the team any further with Codepen?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I'd grow to, it depends on day to day. And this decision is not mine alone. So I'd be just spitballing, but I'd say in my heart of heart, I'd love to double in a couple of years, just because I know that I could put more people to work. We have enough ideas. We have enough places to go. I like managing. I want to do more managing if I can. There's so many smart developers out there. I think I can put my skills and perspective and just kind of knowledge of the industry and stuff to work just as well or better than if I'm sitting there writing code 8 hours a day. Like, I think I could be useful in that role, and I think I want to have the opportunity to do that, but I can't just turn around and hire 4 more people because we can't afford it,
Yeah.
So we need to continue growing and hopefully, be making choices that are getting us growing faster, and then maybe as a company we'll decide to hire more people. I hope we do, but whatever way goes is okay. I just like working on Codepen, and even if we never hired anybody else, I'd be happy with that too.
So you just need more people to buy pro subscriptions so that you can.
Yeah, that's right.
So that you can hire some more people.
Every listener of Inspect, you better upgrade.
Yeah, but before we get onto the actual upgrade, you've got a little treat in store for the listeners. Do you want to explain what's going on here?
Yeah, well, sure. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. Why not? I'm on a podcast. We're talking about Codepen. You have so graciously allowed me to sit here and blab on about my paid product. It's sometimes I try not to be promotional, but at the same time I'm like, well, it's kind of my job to be in a little bit of a sense. So anyway, Codepen Pro unlocks a bunch of features of Codepen that you don't get on a free plan. And there's all kinds of stuff. Not only the projects that we talked about, whereas, if you're pro, you get a whole bunch of them, and you get to upload more files and bigger files and all that stuff, which is a pretty compelling thing for pro, if you ask me. But in the pen editor, you can upload assets there, and we have live view, which is this cool feature of like, as you type, it's changing the preview at a URL that you can test anywhere, like on your phone or your iPad or whatever. That's just one, and there's like 10 other features that you get for pro. So let's give some away on this show. I guess it's your podcast, so you can figure out how you want to pick the winners. Sometimes it's fun to just do something on Codepen itself, but any old way you want to dream up, let's give away 2 free developer plans to whoever's listening. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so this is the competition segment of the podcast. So what we were thinking is, so for all the listeners out there, if you want to win a pro subscription, what is it? A yearly subscription, or is it monthly? How does it work?
No, we'll do a year for sure. I mean, you can sign up either way, but a year of Developer Pro, which is the kind of the primary pro plan.
Okay, brilliant. So a year of Developer Pro, and we're giving away 2 of these. And the way you can win one is go onto Codepen and create a pen, whatever you can think of, but it needs to be somehow related to podcasting. So whatever you want to, whatever you decide to do, make it somehow related to podcasting, and you just need to tag your pen with the word Inspect Podcast. And I will do a search for that tag, and I will have a look at them, and Chris will have a look at them, and we'll pick 2 of the favorites, and those people will be the winners. And
that's exactly what we'll do.
Simple as that. if you haven't got an account on Codepen already, go and create a free account, create a pen, build something cool which is related to podcasting somehow, whatever that means to you. Tag it with Inspect Podcast, and we'll check those in about a couple of weeks. I think 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, or even a month. How long should we leave this? Maybe until the end of this month, end of June.
Fantastic.
And then we'll pick a winner by the end of June and get in touch via Codepen or whichever social network we can find. But yeah, I'll put some instructions in the show notes for this episode. So if none of that made sense, go into the show notes, have a read, and hopefully it'll make sense of what to do there.
Cool.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks for offering that. So this brings us onto your sort of third project, which is is this your most recent now? You're also a host of a podcast called Shop Talk.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I mean, they both happened about the same time. Apparently, Codepen and Shop Talk. It doesn't really feel that way, but I also don't know which it feels like came first. So right. Whatever. Yeah. I also have a podcast, much like this one. We talk about websites. It's great. I have a friend, Dave Rupert, we talk about it with. We have been going for 5 years now, probably I think this year we hit 300 episodes, which is wild. And yeah, we have that. And that's so simple in a way. Like it's a part of the trifecta of projects I work on for sure. And I love it and I'm proud of it. But of all things, that definitely takes the kind of the least amount of time.
Yeah, and I was listening to one of your shows recently. You did an episode called On Podcasting back, just a couple of weeks ago actually. And
we sure did, yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a really good episode, and gave me some hints and tips and what to do. And it was more about sort of equipment to use and how to get
right. It ended up being kind of gear focused in a way.
Yeah, gear focused. But one of the things you mentioned, I think it was in that episode, is how you try to change the format from like the Q&A and interview style formats. And so could you sort of explain what the format of your show is, if there is a specific one?
Yeah, well, in the early days, we tried to play it up a lot more, which was, we may or may not have a guest, but regardless, we're going to take questions from people. We even tried to build like a actual live call-in thing, but we just ended up getting nervous about that. Like we'll use like the Twilio API and have people connect in and stuff, but that ended up being more complicated than we bargained for. And we were a little worried that because in the early days, we actually did the show live as well. We like wired up how it worked, and people could hit a URL and like literally listen to the show live and chat along with us. It's only been in the last, 20 shows or something that we've stopped that, only because it took work, and it was a little harder to pull off. And I'd say about 1% or less of the people who actually listen to the show actually like cared to listen along live, Sure. It's kind of a rare thing in podcasting, but it fit the spirit in the early days, because the idea was a call-in show modeled after kind of like Car Talk on NPR here in the States. I don't know if they air that internationally or not, but the idea is a very popular show on NPR here, which was, two fellas, people would call in and be like, how do you fix the brake calipers on a, 1989 Subaru Outback? I got a rust spot over my left door. What do I put on it? That type of stuff. And they were very knowledgeable about cars and help people out with their problems. And we're like, that would be so fun to have like a tech call-in show. There was even like a show called Tech TV, and they had a call-in segment on, what was that called? The Screensavers or something.
Okay.
I have good nostalgia for call-in tech shows, and call-in shows in general is really fun. It's really all Dave's idea.
Yeah.
So, but instead of doing it, we did it live, but instead of having people call in, a lot of times they just send in an MP3 or send in a written question, and Dave and I would read it and then just answer it, the best that we can. And unfortunately, we're terrible at it. We just a lot of times we end up with a really wishy-washy, it depends kind of answer. But that's what the show has become, and that's a lot of times what the web is. It's very hard to answer people's questions definitively when you just don't know their situation. know what their workplace is like. You don't know what their full tech stack is like. You don't know how much control they have over it or what power they have at work and stuff. So
Sure.
yeah, we try to factor that kind of stuff in and just answer their questions. And
I quite like the format of the show, because it's not always each show doesn't necessarily focus on just one topic. So you could sort of listen to the show and you'll pick up several sort of bits of information which may not come in use at that very moment, but they kind of sink into your brain and become just part of that that knowledge bank that you've got in your head. And it's just helpful, isn't it? It's just small nuggets of information. So how do you split your time between those three projects? What does a typical week look like?
Yeah, it's as you can imagine, there's a bunch of email and just stuff. Whatever. I try to prioritize Codepen work and making sure that everybody knows what's going on and that's a happy and healthy place. And then whatever else. A lot of times I'll wake up and just get right to CSS Tricks and just publish something and then be like, okay, that's done. Now let's look at the old to-do list for Codepen and do that type of work, which could be, designing a feature or looking at open tickets and trying to fix them and stuff. It's some days when I feel like, I'm going to get into the code base. I just feel like getting into the code base. I'll have at least one of those days a week where I just spend many hours and hours and hours just looking at our code and refactoring something and stuff. But maybe it is only one day a week though, and the rest of the days are like, I need to do some business stuff with some people. I need to get back to these people on this idea of this event that we're planning, that type of stuff. So there's plenty of just like business work to do.
Okay. You keep yourself busy.
Yeah, and I don't mind email. We're on Slack all day, of course, on all the other projects, and that's just chat, really. But I still do a ton of email work and don't mind that.
Yeah, I don't think it's ever really going to go away, is it?
Yeah, probably not.
Nah. Just going back to the podcasting thing. Obviously I'm fairly new to podcasting. This is episode 10, so I only started back in March. And I'm still playing around with the format. I've had a few sort of solo episodes, a few guest speakers, and a couple of interviews as well, interview style. Do you have any sort of advice for anyone who wants to get into podcasting and someone like me who's starting out, with your 5 years of experience, how to sort of just keep it going and stay motivated and sort of grow the project?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully it's fun to some degree, or you have some ideas to make it more fun. Yeah, I mean, guests are great just because it's an excuse for you. I mean, in a sense, it's kind of like your ability to get people that might not agree to just call you on, like, just to be perfectly honest, like I love this. I'm happy to chat with you. This is great. But if you wrote me an email that instead didn't say, hey, do you want to be on my show Inspect? It just said like, hey, do you want to just talk on the phone with me for an hour? I have to admit, I probably would have said no,
yeah, that's a little bit weird.
It's not that I don't like you, but I can't just have hour phone calls with people for no reason,
Yeah.
But you can, because you have a podcast and there's like some potential publicity and marketing involved with all that. And that's awesome. You can turn this into a little tiny business. So hopefully if it's paying for itself and you're having good conversations and you're growing with it and loving that part of it, and it fuels your work because you're talking to people about work stuff. I mean, there's all kinds of advantages to keeping going with this. So as long as you're having fun with it and it's not costing you anything significantly, I'd say you won't have a problem keeping it going.
Yeah, I mean, I've kept my setup quite light at the moment. Like you mentioned in your podcast, you had sort of equipment for different budgets. I would say I'm on the sort of lower end of the budget at the moment. I've started off small, see how it goes. Got myself a USB mic. It's a Blue Yeti.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good mic, and I'm just recording I'm using Logic to record.
Cool, that's above what I got.
It's just because I used to make music back in the day, and so I already had a copy of Logic already.
You know what buttons to click.
Yeah, already got a bit of familiarity with it. So I quite like Logic. It allows me to record, the two-way conversation as well. But yeah, at the moment, really enjoying it, and hopefully it'll just carry on growing. And looking forward to get some more guests on as well. So yeah, if anyone wants to be on the show, give me a shout.
Yeah. Do it. Grow.
Yeah, good stuff. So
yeah, I like the idea of podcasting. Grow. I think it's gonna hang on. If I had to guess,
Yeah, I was. I don't know if I was late to the game in terms of getting into podcasting. I got into listening to podcasts probably about a year ago. It was a show called Developer Tea by Jonathan Control, and that was pretty much the first one I subscribed to.
Cool. Yeah, you never know what people are gonna pick, and that was yours.
Yeah, and since then, I've subscribed to quite a few now, and it's just become one of those things that I kind of stopped listening to music on my commute now, and I listen to podcasts all day, every day, pretty much now, just from a variety of topics, not just web development or technology ones. The stuff about business.
It comes and goes in waves for people too, and I think that's okay. They'll be like, I listened to 10 episodes in a row, or I just had a super long road trip and I binged and watched a whole bunch of them. But that's my experience as somebody who's podcasted for 5 years. Somebody will tell you like, they used to listen, but they don't anymore. And then you see them again and they've been listening recently. These people they come and they go, and that's okay. In aggregate, you'll have a listener base that is fairly solid.
Yeah.
But it's probably not the same exact people that are there 3 months later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Which is good for advertising.
Yeah. I need to try and get some advertising on there. I need to think about that one. I might speak to you offline.
Sure. I have no magic really, but it's like, I think you got to hustle a little bit. I don't think sitting back is going to do you anything. I would probably suggest putting together some numbers, putting together like maybe even like a PDF or something, or some kind of page of your site that really like sells what you got. This is what you get. This is the value of it. This is a sample of an ad I did for somebody else, and this is how effective it can be. And here's an article you should read about the future of pie. Like get somebody excited about it, and then maybe they'll bite.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Yeah. That's what I'll have to do now. You've just given me some work to do. Thanks.
Yeah, it's work, unfortunately.
Yeah. So what's next for Chris Coyier now? You've got CSS Tricks, you've got Codepen, you've got Shop Talk Show. You're keeping yourself pretty busy already.
Yeah. There's definitely nothing work-wise that's happening. This year is crazy for me. I got one move I've already done. I got to move again, we're thinking. I just have tons of life events happening to me this year. So I am just and I on purpose, like last year was like, next year I'm going to speak a lot. So now I'm living through this, like I booked a bunch of speaking gigs this year. Mm-hmm. And so I'm living through that as well. And it's just going to be like the busiest year of my life. So I'm like, I am definitely not like rolling out any like super major features of anything. I'm just like living life, publishing, podcasting, running Codepen, and just that's it.
Yeah, just that's it. Yeah, like that's just small things. Yeah.
No, it's not nothing. I realize, but I'm not.
So where are you speaking next?
I leave next week, Wednesday, to head to Amsterdam for CSS Day, which I've never been to before. Oh, right. I've never got to spend much time in Amsterdam at all. I'm very excited to be there, and I get to give a talk that I'm preparing. So tomorrow morning, on a Saturday, unfortunately, I'm going to spend my Saturday polishing up the talk because it's a brand new one, and it's about it's kind of about CSS shapes, but like just loosely that concept, not like the actual CSS shape spec. Okay. It's mostly about like, I don't know, all the different ways that you can use shapes in web design. And like, there's actually like functions as part of CSS. Like there's a circle function.
Yeah.
Really? Where can you use it? What does it take? Why do you use it? That kind of thing. And then only because it turns out there's like all kinds of quirks with it and stuff. So just been digging into that. And that's kind of the point of CSS Day, is that you deep dive into something particularly nerdy as CSS. I've never been there, but that seems like the vibe of it, So it's like, I can do that.
Okay. And what is their website?
It's .nl, I guess, for the Netherlands, right? cssday.nl.
Oh, yeah. Okay. cssday.nl. So that's on the 15th and 16th of June. Yeah, next week.
Yeah.
Cool. So who else is presenting there alongside Rachel Andrew?
I see Rachel at all kinds of stuff because she speaks at all the Event Apart, which is another series that I do. So yeah, Rachel's amazing. Just the master of the CSS grid stuff, which I'm so happy has is paid off for us as developers and the web in general. It's going to be amazing, and nicely has paid off for Rachel because she's just been hammering the CSS grid stuff for for so many years, and everybody's like barely paying attention because they're like, oh, it's behind a flag, boring, and now that it's out, people are like, what? And she's like, I got you covered.
I met up with I briefly met her just a couple of weeks ago. She was doing she did a talk at a event called Breaking Borders, which
cool.
happens just around the corner from me. So it's just quite a small event. It was only maybe about 50 odd people there. But yeah, she just went over obviously what CSS Grid is, and now that it's unleashed into all the browsers and how it's really picking up traction. I've
been reading about it and learning about it for quite a while, to the point where it's like, I don't know, it's starting to be a little more comfortable to just reach for and starting to be part of my brain process, but not entirely yet. There's a lot to know about it, actually. It's not just one property, it's a bunch of properties and it's a bunch of sub functions and stuff. It's actually quite a bit to know. So there's that. And then there's I'm glad she just kind of beats the drum on what you can do, because then you'll show just a very basic, simple thing to somebody, and they'll be like, what? You can do that? Like the knowledge sharing for CSS Grid is just starting.
Yeah.
People do not get it yet. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, exactly. And who was I talking to? I was talking to Wes Boss last week, I think, about it as well. And we were just saying how as CSS sort of evolves over the years, generally you get one or two extra properties. So like when we went from the CSS2 spec to CSS3, there was a few things added, but they weren't very sort of closely related. So you had like some effects, and you had like border radius and things like that. But then when Flexbox and CSS Grid came out, you had all of a sudden you had these big chunks of CSS properties all related that you had to learn for them all to work. And it was just one of those things that was really hard to get it all into your head at once. So what do? You go on Google and you try and learn how to use these two things, Flexbox and Grid, and where do you end up? CSS Tricks is like the first article, and your article on both of those is it's like gold dust. Really, it's probably one of my sort of most frequently visited articles on your site is the Flexbox and the Grid one.
Yeah, that one's They've both been pretty good.
Yeah, but it's going to take a little while for it to become second nature in my mind, I think, because there's quite a lot of new properties were added. There's a lot of different ways, especially of using the Grid as well, which didn't really come naturally.
Yep. It really is a big deal, though. So, if anybody's like, what should I learn about front-end development? I'll tell you what to learn. Grid. Get on it.
Definitely. And you've also written a book about SVGs, Practical SVG.
Yeah. That came out about, has it been a year? I don't quite think so, but soon, I think. I forget when it launched exactly, but yep, it's actually, I'm more and more happy about it because of the fact that SVG hasn't changed like at all since I've written it. Yeah. So many people like write tech stuff, and then they're like, oh, it went out of date so quickly. Like if you wrote a book about Angular 1 or something, you'd be screwed,
Yeah.
But I wrote this SVG book, and like nothing has changed since the day I wrote it. I almost should use that as a big new marketing push for it or something. But so it's just as useful as the day I published it practically, which it's just another one of those technologies that's just way under known about, or even if people are like, oh yeah, I know about that SVG stuff. I'll tell you what you don't do: reach for it when you should.
Yeah.
Because even if you know what it is, people aren't using it, or they should. They just use the same old thing. And I dig into say, I've had talks I've given about SVG where I kind of try to dig into why I think that is and stuff like that. But the book itself is just like, you're a front end developer. Here's what SVG is. This is what you should use it for. This is, some techniques and stuff that you should be aware of. And the book is short. All those A Book Apart books are, the kind of the, I don't know, I guess the marketing or thought behind them is that, if you had a couple hour plane ride, you could probably get through the whole thing. Just it's a one sitting kind of book, and mine's no exception.
Yeah, no, definitely. I haven't really played around with SVG enough. It's something that I should definitely do. I think SVG, my use of SVG is stuff like, icons, just getting vectors into a page. But one good example of SVG I saw recently was have you seen the website on Apple where they're showing how to shoot photos on the iPhone 7?
No.
You've probably seen that they released a series of videos recently on how to use the iPhone 7 camera to shoot different styles of photo. Basically, just teaching you how to use the camera. And on the marketing page for those videos, the hero image at the top, they've got a video playing in the background, and the text that's overlaid on that video is in SVG, and then it's using blend modes. So as the video is moving around in the background, you're getting this, the blending of the text, and it looks so cool. But it's just one of those uses of SVG which may not come to mind straight away. But yeah, it's quite a creative use of it. So yeah, you should check that out as well.
I'm gonna do it. I haven't seen that at all. Thanks for letting me know. That's awesome.
Yeah, and you know how the iPhone, the interface has got all these sort of blur effects, and they're making use of SVG icons to do those blurs on the web as well, which is quite cool. So they, having some synergy between iOS and what they're showing on the web. Yeah, it's really
so cool.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, well, that's all of my questions. Is there anything that you would like to mention just before we go, like any plugs, or where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, I can't do it. You've given me the whole show to do plugs for myself. So
that's okay.
No, I don't have much else. I mean, a lot of times when given the opportunity, I tell people about Codepen or about the new Codepen projects, but we already did that kind of thing. We also have team plans on Codepen. If there's anybody out there listening who works on a team, the point of them is that we've kind of learned that we haven't done a very good job of explaining this to people. So I guess I'll take this opportunity to attempt it. When you are on a team on Codepen, you can switch back and forth between whether you're using Codepen as yourself or using it as a team. So I can be on Team CSS Tricks on Codepen, and I am, and I just can easily toggle back and forth whether I'm using it as CSS Tricks or I'm using it as myself. And I'd use it as myself because I'm playing around by myself. I'm building something as me, or I use it as CSS Tricks when I'm building a demo for the site. And when I'm on a team, of course, there's multiple human beings on that team. Our whole staff at CSS Tricks is also on Team CSS Tricks. So if they need to change one of my demos, they just go in and do it because they have the same access to the pen that's owned by the team. They have access to the same bucket of assets. They have access to all the same collections. They can see all the private pens that the team owns. I mean, that's the point of having a team, is that you're all sharing it together. It's all paid together with one credit card. And you all have access to the same bucket of stuff. But you get to maintain yourself on Codepen. It's not like you have to make this hard choice between do I give up my personal Codepen account to be on a team or anything like that. It's just you're just on that team as well.
Okay, no, that's really good. I've never noticed that feature. So I'll have a look at that as well. Maybe suggest it to the guys at work if anyone wants, if they want to sign up for it. Sure.
All right. I think it's compelling to when I can get somebody's company to pay for it for them. Yeah. You're at a big company, you should provide this for your employees or whatever. Not that I don't think it's worth it for any team, but I think that's the perfect use case, is when you can get your company to buy it for you.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So, so generally on the web, you're known as either Chris Coyier for your personal stuff, but otherwise Real CSS Tricks.
Yeah, that's just the cheesy Twitter thing because CSS Tricks was taken. But I'm Chris Coyier on Twitter and GitHub and Instagram and stuff.
Yeah, I'll pick a bunch of your social profiles and stick them in the show notes, but I'm sure most people who are listening to this already know who you are, and they already know where to find you, and I'm sure they're already following you anyway, because why wouldn't they be? So just finally, thanks for being on the show. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's fun. Next time we'll get to ask you all the same questions at some point. Sometimes I'm I got to talk about myself forever, which I'm happy to do, but I'm interested in other people too. So we'll chat again, AJ. Sometime.
Yeah, definitely. Do you ever have guests on your show on Shop Talk?
Yeah. It's, kind of 50-50 whether we have a guest or not. So maybe we'll get you over there one of these days.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd love to. All right, brilliant.
Do a crossover. All right. Take care, man.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Okay. Speak to you soon. Bye. Okay, so that was episode 10 of Inspect. Thanks once again to Chris for coming onto the show and being a great guest. You can find all the links to everything mentioned in today's episode in the show notes at inspect.fm. If you have any questions or any comments or any feedback, you can hit me up on Twitter at inspectfm or drop me an email on inspectfm@gmail.com. All these details are on the website as well. And if you liked what you've heard in the show, it'd be great if you could leave a review or rating on iTunes. It does help the show appear higher up in the search and lets other people find the show as well. And it would just generally just make me feel good as well. So if you could do that, that'd be great. And I will catch you in the next episode.